Welcome. So I made one more animation before I start kind of just looking around, talking about some stuff that I was thinking about going into now for various reasons. Okay, so I made this animation where basically I took Western Papua New Guinea region, I'm not sure if this is still Papua New Guinea, and folded it down here. And then I took North Maluku Islands, Maruku, something Mauku Islands. Move them down here. I kind of moved this, just got rid of this in the chunk, as you can be seen, because it's almost in my mind like it was actually like maybe it was down here, maybe it was here actually. Now that I think about it, maybe it actually was down here and I didn't quite appropriately do this. But I was kind of watching it like this island. Things around it, like right, this green dot is kind of reminiscent of what's below it. Pretty like there's some kind of dot going on down. I mean, looking for that kind of thing just to see, like looking over here, like this curvature underneath it goes like that. Like in the island, it does kind of go like that there. So maybe it's a little off and needed to be overlapping that. And then like these streaks are reminiscent of the island. It has two streaks through it, right at that region. So that's kind of like maybe even streaks out of this segment. So there's this Borneo, I think this is called, down here. I'm not sure. I've been thinking about it. So I posted this subject matter on like a expanding or Earth specific discussion forum. People didn't appreciate the content. And I'm just. And that's one of the main things, the concerns was that the positioning of Papua New Guinea. Let me find it. Maybe this one. Not this one. I gotta find the folder. And this one. The positioning of Papua New Guinea here. James Maxlow is one of the like modern leading scientists in the expanding Earth theory, proponents thereof. And essentially, the response was he doesn't put it there. He puts it up like by Alaska, and they essentially also agreed in their own interpretations that it was there. But the thing is like I'm not basing it on guessing. Like I based it off of the currents that float in the magnetic anomaly map, coupled with the Earth itself. So like I know Papua New Guinea was there. It didn't matter that much, but like I see that it's a very complex region. These are bonds. That was not another thing I use the term bonds because that's what it is. So to use the term that it is to describe that which it is an easy way to transmit a lot of content, idea, thought, and things in literally one word without actually saying it all. But it's such a like step. It's like that word's not allowed in this discussion. Oh Lord, but that's what like hinges that it was here. Like there, not only these two, but the whole coastline having them that go all the way here, and there's nuances the whole way. There's nuances that match between the coastline of the actual boundary. I should probably do down here also. So far, I did this one and I did this one, like close up of right here and a close up of right here. So I should really do a close up of like maybe this segment followed by maybe this segment. The thing is, it's very tricky because the Earth is like at that point curvature matters so much that it's hard to like this is a pretty substantial chunk to get it in high enough resolution without like really having the curvature. Anyway, doesn't matter. But so I feel based on everything I've analyzed that is where it was. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about the matter. Like it was from here to here with the bird extension to down here basically. This bird beak that just I've been saying this is something that maybe that I was going to talk about now, so it's probably might as well talk about it now that I'm getting to it, just by the conversation that I'm having with myself, I guess. Pardon me calling it a conversation. Indoctrination, maybe, I don't know. But there's a current that flows this way under the eastern boundary of North America that wraps around Laurentia and is so extended that it just creates continental shelf with another current coming down this way going through here, but also like passing by and crossing. So it essentially this current just continues through to this region where Papua New Guinea is here with the bird tip extending down. So I've been saying right here was feeding into right here. That essentially this current flowed this way. And then here, it then went into underneath South America and fanned out like a flame from this current going this way. But it's occurred to me in multiple instances that there's a subtlety of this that I missed that is very much cleared up now. And that is that like the currents were really like flowing under these things through these regions with like a flow that was substantial enough to just like destroy the crust above and just break it into smaller chunks and just remove the chunks basically and make it broken apart islands. But that was occurring here as well, and it really definitely a current was flowing through this region. That probably was going through here, generally speaking, and just ultimately the end result of the process was a bird's beak like this. But essentially where the current then here was feeding into here, Does that make sense? I went that way. This goes here, over this way, it seems. Actually, it does kind of have a flow back to it along this path there. That's where I placed it in this one. So I've been saying the current was flowing specifically here into South America, but I'm thinking now that maybe it actually was bending this way, and then a secondary current that was essentially going like beyond a certain point of the same current, but it was beyond a certain point. So it divided the current and put an actual divide between them. Where on one side it supported the continental crust above by the current's nature to a degree, where over here it really was turbulent, probably because it's just funneling it through this narrow channel that's meeting a resistance from below, generally speaking, because there's a current going this way. Here. So there's a second current this way. A first current going basically this way that branches in two directions. Two currents that are basically meeting in this region, really over here. This current and this current have like a meetings region here that I think is related also to a third current coming from over here, basically, that flowed this way. And then physically underneath physically, oh, that's why. Physically underneath this one, under here. So generally coming this way. Or no, this way. Let's look at the thingamajig. This way, maybe? It would be almost identical to this one, which maybe is how it would work, although it seems like it would meet at a 120-degree angle for three currents flowing together generally. It's certainly not a 180-degree angle with this secondary current pushing from the side. Although maybe... maybe... Oh my god. So Hawaii is forming somewhere in this process. I feel like there'd be real evidence of its like motions. Hawaii formed as a large sphere particle that rolled out from the top corner of the Pacific, where currents had lodged it initially. Maybe even actually, I was thinking it might have formed here at this kind of like center of this big circle looking region here. Whatever exactly, like right here. It's kind of an X. Yeah, this is the place that reminded me of Mount Girnar. I don't know if it's got the same right here. I think that was it. That's a possibility. Over here is a possibility. For it to have formed here, it would have had to like basically flow under the surface. Over here, just roll underneath the surface, practically. I mean, there is the possibility that it moved like up here and then up to like certain steps that it moved along the way to go up into this region. Because there's one of those signals here, or maybe it's this here. Maybe there's something like that. If there was a Hawaiian sphere that rolled out, maybe it stopped here, and maybe on its way, it essentially bounced. Boing, 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 boing. I don't know, that seems silly. It's too silly. It's just too silly. Whereas, what I was just looking at, like if this was over here, or here, I was wondering if maybe like this chunk actually like broke off from over like atop this chunk, like down here though. Something's up here that I am not quite picking up on. But let's go back to this current. Part of me, a little distracted. Just thinking like maybe this provides an like if there's a basically if Hawaii formed in this ammonite structure where there's just basically there's a bunch of nova type events because of currents flowing not there but over here that are especially visible in this ammonite shape, but also like figure eights that are kind of overwritten by subsequent things, but are still present there. So maybe, like, my thought is, like, this material's going somewhere. It's bringing all this material here, and then it does something with it to, like, empty it out, because it's not like this. It's more, like, empty blue. Like, there's not material. It's been, like, moved about to shape other regions or shape something. And, you know, like the pearl kind of idea of, like, in it. I don't know if ammonites have pearls at all inside of them, but like maybe like this basically, my thought is, not maybe, but my interpretation is that this is basically how radioactive decay works, where a particle formed and then it reached this point of instability where like a current was like the pressures on it were overwhelming to a point where the current got into the center and just flowed and really like removed material that then is hard to say what happened to the material. But what I have come to conclude otherwise is Hawaii, these islands, fit together on a sphere and really were a sphere, like inclusive of their seamount, because of reasons that I've talked about. Like there's basically a triangle-ish cup base that holds like the bulk of the mantle of the particle, which was like a mini planet, and it holds it in the cup of the Big Island with a support structure of a cold, dense Mauna Kea, and then the actual mantle material that's just contained in this island. And then in the middle is this like W with two arms shape, and then at the top is, and this wraps around on a sphere, and then like capping the structure is this structure, and this is the inner structure of the sphere, while the rest of the seamounts are the outer structures of the outer shells, because it's basically an atom that has electron orbitals that it's shedding as it goes and just removing material in the process to become a new stable system, because essentially it was only stable in the pressures of the currents, but then the earth stopped expanding, so it like relented and the currents flowed back away from the particle, so it could then just like actually cool and start to like find its rest position, so it rolls because it was on a hill down into the Pacific and just slopes downward into and rolls until it hits basically a boundary of this current coming in here that's basically running under Australia on this side, but then going up along Papua New Guinea and the coastline on this direction. And so it runs into this current and this like upwelling basically, and it bends along it, just shedding material as it goes until it rests, and there it is. That I feel really good about, as absurd as it sounds. I've done the research on the matter. I wouldn't, like, before just like assuming it doesn't actually fit the data. Maybe look to see if it fits the data, because it does. Especially with like other things I've said that like really account for things where like obvious questions that people might have are already explained in those other things. I just have too much content now. I don't know what to do. Maybe that's the problem, is I shouldn't be sharing it, and this is what happens. It just becomes a freaking mess for anyone to really consider. Okay, so now that I've said that, let's keep going. This current, though, I feel really good about that. So there's a current coming in this way, along this boundary, right here. Actually, along this boundary, here it is, up here, so up here, along here. That's then running into underneath here. But then, like, over here is over here. So Fiji, I was thinking yesterday. I was referencing this, so I feel bad not to reference this, especially because his channel is awesome. This channel is awesome. This is awesome. Like, especially these green things, not to disregard these, but like, especially everything. That there's even like parallels across, whether or not they're all exactly true or accounted for, because like there's so much to it, is like awesome. That's all. It's really solid. So he mentioned in one of my last videos that I should look into this region, and I was actually, it's serendipitous. It really is. Because I was thinking, like, because of this bird, like, it really means there was a current flowing here for a time. But while space was opening between Australia and South America, where the current was kind of like stuck still. So that really like opens the doorway to explaining what was going on with Fiji, because I've literally been like, did this cause Hawaii? Was this happening over here? Where was this happening? Like, not really thinking it through, I guess, since I had Papua New Guinea over here. Like, obviously it's going on not up here, but I haven't like I didn't reason through it to that point because it just wasn't what I was focused on, so I didn't really think about it. But it was going on generally down this way, where Fiji, this spinning system seems to have been occurring. Does that go back to kind of branches up and goes this way? I'm just trying to force it to here though at that point. Is it going on maybe down here? It's really at the top. I have not put much attention into this region. This region. This region. It would probably help to know when like some of these islands were forming. I think it's pretty recent though, so this is probably like when the like tap bust through. Like it's feeding through this way, but then it punctures the mantle maybe a secondary time, because the mantle was punctured over here in India. But then it was a secondary puncture over here. Maybe it was more here. Initially, like right there. And then as it... This was probably more right here where it bends up, was probably related to where this bends. Did it just like rip some material off? What is... I thought this kind of like, because a current was flowing here, it just like quickly accreted a new bond. Literally. But maybe it just like took the material with it. Not sure. Let's get back to Fiji, though. What can we take from this being... Ew. Okay, so we've got basically this current is actually essentially the current coming from up this direction, up here. And then there's a second current coming this way, so then they cross in this region. Where the second current goes across here, and the first current goes across here, but they appear to be coming out of the beak here, cutting across this way to this point, and then specifically being at the same angle as this current coming out from underneath Mexico, so that they basically have the same, like, a balance that is struck between them, even though it's not like this way. They're at a 120-degree angle, maybe. Let's see if that. I know it's a little bit of a large globe here. Just kind of get an idea. I mean, probably not far from it. I don't know why this has a background. Uh, I mean, it's probably more like that, actually. Although, but still not 120. That's fine. But it's essentially they're coming in at a splitting angle relative to this thing that then leads to a focus beam down the coastline of South America, which is why it just cuts the ammonite, just splits the ammonite here. So I guess why is it meeting? From south, it's meeting basically from here. The current coming this way. At most, it's like over here. I don't think it's really under here, although maybe it was like starting to wrap around that way too. It does kind of have something like that here. And like up this way. Something suggestive that there was a current maybe flowing generally across here at that angle. But I really think it was more so just this and then fanning out across this way. Well, let's go back here though. This focus beam here, it's a focus beam by these two colliding currents, one of which is basically flowing between this current, and this current. So it's just like squeezing between. And then somewhere along the line, when interacting with this current, it meets some like balance point where they really start to focus down this way, and it kind of bends back this way and bends back this way relative to it because of the balance generally down the middle, but that kind of feature going on. And then on this large current passing through, it really leads to this like substantial like island structures, divots, a lot of turbulence in a eddies, specific eddies that lead to things features I've talked about. That others have talked about, I'm sure. Sorry, anyone, if I am stepping on people's things they talk about. No, it's not completely. What did I just do? I don't know what I've done. It looks like I'm doing that now. Okay. So that's a big progress in that. Okay, let's look at the map then. Essentially here, right here, is where this current and this current are colliding. Current from, maybe its lowest boundary is at this point. And then this wider current that's much wider, but ultimately like the backstop current in a way that this current has almost support from, perhaps. So it cuts across, comes in balance, creates this structure. Which seems to have occurred here, really. I guess let's go to this picture. Like if a current's coming this way, like generally this way maybe to a degree. Something of this nature, but I'm trying to envision it maybe going down more this way. Yeah, this probably was physically attached here, bonded here. Like this chunk was just bonded. This whole stretch, though, was physically here. Bonded from here to like here, maybe. That's what happened. That's what happened. It's gotta be. It doesn't, it's a little odd if it folded like that, but isn't clear. But I suspect if I look closely like this, maybe matches here. This one. Let's see. Like this maybe goes here. And then it has this inward thing here. And maybe it like separated there on both sides, but then like maybe this comes down and was connected here. Because essentially, like when things break apart, they have segments that are left behind. Like it only broke through here, and then it just had like the final points that broke. It didn't really need to remove all the material of the bond. Like the full bond didn't need to be broken, it just needed to weaken the bond between adjacent layers to then create like some chakras. So that's probably going on. Like let's see. Let's just say 85. I feel like it's gonna be shorter. Way shorter at that distance. Although I don't want to go talking about something I haven't really looked at, but it looks like there's something of that nature where essentially this chunk was physically here. Because essentially this whole stretch, this here was folded in, attached here. This was attached in some way, maybe up in along this side, maybe. And then this whole chunk of these segments like connected, or just kind of sitting like right adjacent here. And then the rest of North America just like nested against it, with Florida more over here. But like way more like that way than this. Like up this way is way more this way, relatively speaking. Like this. Way more like that. Maybe this is related to this. Just thinking if Florida was like attached up here. If it like took a chunk with it that left this like lightning capital of the world place. I don't know. Mary Cabo. Mary, this place. Unavailable. Maracaibo. Okay, so we got a current coming in this way. We got a current coming in that way. Pinching on this, shooting a beam. But initially that beam is actually down here. So initially it's down here, like right in the beginning. It's down here. So it like initially goes between them. Just really only to like here. I guess this chunk. Maybe this pre-existed. We call this like a failed continental, or failed continent. And I thought it was basically accreted. Like this was accreted. Or it's considered to be. Now that I'm seeing these bonds, I'm like, damn. They look like that needed some time to develop that, like, crossed the subtleties that are there. Make it almost like maybe it was more about the whether or not the currents were present to like make it anew. Where there are just a lot of currents there, maybe, but it was actually like still that size here. And it maybe wasn't actually accreted at all, but the currents were just flowing there. I'm not sure. I've accepted the interpretation that it was accreted for pretty much everything I've said for a while. But seeing the like truly the bonds across it's makes me feel like the currents didn't really escape until they got out into the ocean regions that they started to carve. And this region just saw a lot of currents and it made it like a new, but it really was already like had the support structure because it pre-existed. So like anything here, it pre-existed and had the support structure practically. Maybe there's really not much accreted stuff. It's more just broken apart, rearranged, and sometimes aged. Although that theory that I just kind of casually put out there to counter things I've said and make it my argument overall weaker to people who want to just casually disregard me in a similar casual way. Maybe is not like Australia would probably be a little more, a little younger, I'd imagine, than it seems to be. So it's probably not the case. Maybe it was just straight up accreted to a point where it just formed like a land, like across time, and then they broke apart when but having like a pretty much identical bond to as if they had both just pre-existed and been bound beforehand, before the rapid phase of expansion, maybe. Wow, an ocean is opening over here, flowing into these, breaking them apart into this region. Going up this way. Up this way. Up this way. And then another one going down this way. Okay, what is going on? This is attached to Central America to then be adjacent South America, which was over here. Probably down to right about there. And then I feel like South America had this point. Essentially being fed from there. It seems like it doesn't quite angle well to how it is now. So maybe it was more like right along here kind of thing initially where the current was flowing more down here. But then as it widened, it started to produce this region. Then the current was flowing maybe out this way, like bounced out, filled in a mound, and just ended up going around it. Some reason, as it essentially widens the structure, moves the structure, then this structure moves. So the crust can stabilize somehow. I feel like the current, though, is still coming out here, so it's really a surface current that then, like, hits a wall and just goes down. Not really a craton at that boundary. Pretty much, though. Yeah, probably. Then enough where, like, the current just couldn't drill into it further, so it instead just went down underneath it, physically underneath, to a point where it flowed under it and fanned out around it, so it flowed, like, out the sides. Like a, I don't know, some liquid that you put something in. A jelly or something, something less, not so just flowing as water, but like able to flow. That like when weight sits on it, it's kind of squirts out the sides where it can, but it has a current flowing it, so it just kind of like goes under, but builds a mound to start to fan outwards. So maybe it was initially going like under, but just building resistance to that path, so it started to fan out more. It's still getting in though. It's still getting in. It's not that I totally resist. I'm feeling like it's got like a flow down and around, but it's still really getting down and flowing like along it, pretty much just along the base at a pretty relatively at a plane, not like a mountainous, like it has to go really sharp down angles. But really, like it reaches a point where it can just move forward, and then it's just on the base of it with like basically gravity pushing upward in essence. Some anti-gravity equivalent, the buoyancy thing. I don't know. Okay. So, current though is flowing across here, which really like this is flowing right here. Okay, that helps a lot. Okay. This is flowing here. So basically we have a current coming in actually this way and bending up this way around this boundary where a current coming in this way cuts across it here, creating all this effects here with the crossing of the currents, and then it physically wraps around and like goes into here basically, where I believe the current coming down here maybe at some point and like builds a boundary here and just flows along the Papua New Guinea segment, like right into here. But then this cross current's right coming right down here this way. This way. At least I think this is two separate currents. I'm not completely sure in terms of their direction. Like I interpreted it that essentially this current cutting, there's a current coming over here from the mantle puncture hole that flows this way out underneath Europe, which was from India underneath Europe across the non-existent ocean at the time, and then under North America, where it essentially begins to cause like a shape here, generally speaking, because it's just pre-existing continental crust that it's kind of going around but pushing material under also to like shape the region to have like a boundary, I believe. Like it physically causes generally a Laurentia underbelly of currents pushing under it that then lead to a more focused flow this way. Like over time they become more focused this way to just flow through here instead of like just generally across the whole region. They become focused once the region is just filled with material. And then that focus crosses this other beam here, which really is around here. So a little bit before where I think they actually essentially maybe back. No. Maybe here then, like this is where Papua New Guinea was. And then the bird segment was here. This is like the flat side when North America was down here, Central America, this region was physically here. And then it moved away. First it moved away and just like the pressure was too high, so it started to just create space this way. And then that stressed the bonds between North America and Australia by this like being plugging up, like that it's not able to flow under South America as easily because the currents has just flowed to fill the regions they were flowing towards and under continents before expansion occurred, rapid expansion, and then essentially began to move away and just kind of create this like spray from underneath the region before it like Australia broke away, and then the Central America swung back in here. And maybe that even like because it was attached here, it held on, and while instead like North America although it doesn't, it must have been generally not happening. There's not like swinging going on over here, so it's really just happening in this region. So it swung here, just over top. I think it swung over top the underbelly of South America that was still attached to Florida here. And it just physically slid over top it enough where it just got lodged, and it's just kind of sitting there. But it was over here. So Papua New Guinea was here when it was like the this point, or this point went down to essentially here. This point, sorry, what is this? Solomon Islands, it's not even Papua New Guinea anymore. That is at least, okay, it's not completely nuts, okay. Solomon Islands, it's probably mostly Solomon Islands, okay, good to know. Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands are the beak. So Solomon Islands are the beak. They were feeding in, maybe that's what happened here, like it moved. Initially it was closer, like here, and then it moved to like this position, which then, or to this position, maybe it just moved here and then here. When it was here, when it moved here, Papua New Guinea was just here, maybe. And then the Yucatan Peninsula and this region were generally where this structure is up to here. Maybe. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't want to try to explain those islands right now. It does look like they're generally related to that location. Like this bond broke. Maybe when this bond broke, it just sent like material with it as it moved away. So maybe these chunks actually are parts of the chunks missing along here. Okay, I'm just sorry. I know I'm just kind of staggered in thought in some ways. I'm just trying to think about just whatever. So we got this bird, Solomon Islands, that was feeding along the boundary to a vortex. Which maybe was going on here. Initially, let's look at ocean. Okay, this is old down here. Okay, that helps. That helps. I don't know what it's referring to. It must be here and beyond, I guess. Let's check out this. Pretty much down to between the legs. Right? No. No. It's like all the way out here. There's a chunk like out to here. That does look like that could be a bond. Yeah, the bond. Bloop. Is anything here old? So it's like the current was flowing down. Flowing this way. One current flowing here that was going generally this way. A second current going generally this way that initially was leading into underneath South America, but then ended up causing a current flowing down the coastline, which led to this segment. Like, what is up with that? It's got a W. It's got a W. This segment must have just formed with this then. It was probably down here, adjacent to this region. Like, but it was opening up space initially, but essentially this blue is before the Earth expanded. And then, like, once it rapidly started to expand, is really building into, like, green and beyond. Green through red. So, like, it looks like as the Earth was not expanding yet, we can just kind of remove this segment. So, essentially, this current is flowing in to here, and then there's another current flowing down this way that's going along its coastline. In so doing, it's causing a current to also go out along this way, wrapping into basically ballooning into a region that's just putting stress on things. While this region is pretty old. So it just like slid away. Because essentially this was over here. So it must have rapidly slid away. Like once it started to balloon, Australia broke away from like these regions relatively easy. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like they needed to hitch a ride. It's just a little odd that this... Oh, that's actually past them? No, I mean, it's pretty much where they were. Would that make sense? They got redeposited. the currents that were underneath them were generally flowing probably when this was occurring, so maybe like it literally formed an oceanic crust that they like were detached from, but were just generally there until they just spontaneously practically reattached to something they were passing by, like this one attached here. And then this one, which was attached to up here. I was thinking maybe these that were actually like arms wrapping around this initially. Like I kind of just removed them, but maybe they went over into here and went around the top side of this. But then when it disconnected, it like reconnected there, but these stayed sufficiently connected, although it looks like if they were connected previously, this did quite the job reconnecting. Although maybe that's how it goes. I don't know how good these things bond and like, create the appearance of continuity, never being unbonded. Okay, so there's a current flowing generally here, colliding with this. But I gotta think about it over here. Certainly coming this way, like this is definitely that current. And then over here. And then over here, it looks like it maybe it just like turns. Initially it's down here and then it widens over this way. Almost in like a step-by-step process where its current's that way and it's still that way. So maybe like this went this way, this way, this way. I'm not sure completely if that's actually what's going on with these. I'm just trying to like reason through it by this line of reasoning, see if it actually works. Then it would be simply explained easily, but maybe what I was just saying about these are not actually exactly related to this current that here. I mean, surely this one seems like it should be. If like this region was down here, then it was putting a current this way, which is why this is going on. Although, yeah, this current coming into Australia from Antarctica was coming in basically at the very eastern boundary of Australia, is because that's where the current was entering. So the current's boundary coming into Australia this way, it was over at the eastern boundary generally. So that means anything shaped out here is really going to be more so not related to that current. So that would probably suggest that yes, there is a current coming this way from up here, from Papua New Guinea through Solomon Islands, but along the eastern boundary of Australia, that when the systems started to detach from one another, it still flowed out of here and just deposited this. But then I guess quickly started to move as Australia, like all of this started to expand, like the Earth started to expand, so like it needed to fit on the newer radius Earth. So then maybe it like had to shift in energies to just essentially have different focuses of the current until it's stabilized at its current radius of Earth. Which really, as it's stabilized, or maybe not as it's stabilized. this current is really more reaching up there when it starts to go to Fiji. So initially it's going down there. She's probably down this way. I haven't been able to actually find this with a parallel. Like over here, I found these with parallels with like nuances of parallels. This one, this one, this one. This one I see it, but I don't know what to like relate it to over here. There's no like synonymous one. Like there's that one, but that's not the right position. Unless like all of this, unless the only option really is like Australia turned and wasn't adjacent to Papua New Guinea. But I feel like that doesn't make sense. So this one just doesn't make sense. This has to pretty much be like lodged here relative to Southeast Asia, which was then the islands were then physically up here in this region. So Australia really was here, down here, with islands between, and then with its far eastern corner down here, it seems. Far southeast, that one. That corner. But I just don't see it on the... Usually I'm able to see, like, the bond location, maybe here. But it would... Let's just measure like this. 900. Okay, I mean, not completely unreasonable. Let's see what else is going on. It really seems more... This one... This current's going this way. I think when the Earth starts to expand, though, the current that was going this way then quickly starts to go this way. Oh, so maybe that's what's happening. As the Earth starts to expand, this current, like the three currents are just having a changing focus where they're at, and this is later in the game, I guess. Later in the game, once Australia has broken away from Antarctica, the current from Antarctica that was going into Australia is diverted up this way. I don't know, like it doesn't... Not sure. It's kind of going this way though, so maybe instead it went this way. This current might have ended up flowing this way, because it really doesn't need to also cut across this way when there's a current coming here. Like, it's a little odd. There's a current coming this way, or this way, that wraps generally here, I guess. That then goes down here and kind of like flows in those currents, which really would be suggestive that that is where they were meeting. And even over here, is maybe... This here looks like it was just drilling into this point and just expanding. Current, maybe? Like here? What is going on down here? It's so much data. I mean, I've gotten a good bearing on other places that I didn't really know what to think about them before. So, yeah, here is Fiji. Here's Fiji. It just looks so far away from New Zealand. So this structure, so really this current is pretty much right here. I don't know, guys. I don't know. That's about all I got now, I guess, for now. I'll just stop here and stop, like, dragging this on. Pardon me if I do that too much. I know I just got so much content, I gotta just be like, dude, you gotta make it fucking short and concise and just not be publishing these, but at the same time, like, I think what I'm doing is so important to, like, document it that it's okay that it's not so, like, what people want. Alright, peace out.